What is going on, podcast listening people? Connor Doobie here. Welcome into B2B Mentors. We're excited to have you listening on this Friday or whenever you're listening. You may be listening to this a year down the road. Either way, we have some phenomenal content, information, and guests for you per the usual arrangement. Please do me a tiny favor if you're watching this live or watching this video after the fact. Make sure you drop a comment, any questions, and if you get any value, make sure you share this with your audience as well. I guarantee you there's somebody in your network who would love to get access to this information. In addition to that, if you prefer to listen, you can access B2B Mentors on the go, wherever you like to go. Just look up B2B Mentors on all your favorite podcast apps. Please go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star review so others can find the show too. I have a great guest for you today. I'm going to bring Grant Johnson up here in just a minute. Seasoned Chief Marketing Officer with multiple successful exits under his belt. Grant currently leads global marketing for Emburse, overseeing marketing strategies, programs, and tactics designed to increase market leadership, generate demand, and enhance customer advocacy. And Grant, you're pretty humble in that bio, so I know we have a lot more than that to dive into, so I'm going to go ahead and bring you up on stage, my friend. Good to see you. Happy Friday to you.
Hey, happy Friday, Connor. Great to be talking with you today.
How's it? What made you decide to start doing podcasts like this more regularly? I know a lot of other peers of yours kind of like to stay behind the scenes. What's led you to want to build your personal brand as much as you have been?
Yes, it was really about thinking how to elevate Emburse in the marketplace and accelerate our attraction. We brought together 6 companies in January of 2020, and we are, well north of 150 million. So we're of size, we're global, and we're growing. And we found that with COVID, the ability to connect with customers in person was basically impossible for a number of months. We're now finally thinking about it here, well over a year later. And
I'm ready.
Yeah, on airplanes, trains, automobiles, trade shows, you name it, it'll all be great. But so how do we engage audiences, whether they're customers, prospects, stakeholders? And I just thought, hey, let's try this out. And I talked to my team, and we envisioned 4. We're up to 7, going on 8, and it's going to be a monthly rhythm now. And so I've had fun, like you do, being the host. So it's we'll turn the table today, and I'll let you ask the questions.
And you're going to get your own podcast rolling, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll keep it going for sure.
The Grant Johnson Experience. I think people will enjoy listening into that. So I gave kind of the humble bio of yours. Nobody can do it better than you. I want to give you permission to brag a little bit. Tell us what some of the successes, big successes you've had over the years and your experiences, and what led you to where you're at in your career and your life today.
Yeah, it's a great way to frame a career, because I have peers who they sort of ended up somewhere that they hadn't envisioned. I feel like I've arrived to the destination that I charted, a few decades ago. I did fall into marketing. I was in a rotational assignment out of college. I was a poli-sci major of all things. And so I worked in every department, and, I didn't really like the production line, let's put it that way, or other aspects, but I really like the sales of marketing, and marketing in particular, because in technology, it's very dynamic. It's intellectually stimulating, and it combines art and science. It's, you can't do it all, with analytics. You have to have some gut feel, feel for the customer, feel for the market, feel for messaging. And so once I started rolling in tech, right around the .com days, I, got to the point where I was leading marketing. There was a company that I was recruited to called Big Fish. And you've never heard of that name. And I said to the CEO, kind of sounds like a .com name. What do we really do? And so it was a SaaS company that filtered the messages, spam, viruses before they got to your company, so you could recover productivity and avoid downtime. And so I came up with the name Frontbridge. I was told, hey, you got to come up with a new name. We're talking board Monday. Can you do it this weekend? So there's nothing like having, an incredible deadline. And so I looked at a couple different names. I came up with Frontbridge. Microsoft bought the company in 2005. And so since then, the last 15 plus years, I've, been acquired 6 more times. So 7 total acquisitions. I've been part of acquiring, merging with 17 companies. So I've learned a few things along the way. And, I would say the highlights are really when you get to that successful next step. So whether it could be raising the next round, merging, getting acquired. The most recent one before I joined Emburse in November of 19, and back in 2018, I was brought on board of a cybersecurity company called Cylance, and BlackBerry bought that company. And so they've moved forward with integrating that to their overall offering. And I really like being where the action is, reporting to CEO, where I can shape marketing's contribution to the growth equation. And so it's been a fun last year and a half building the team and helping build this Emburse brand.
First couple times people are like, oh, this dude's just lucky, Come to find out, there's probably a formula you got in place to have that many successful exits. What I'm interested in as well is, over the years, what do you feel like have been some of the biggest roadblocks and hurdles that you've overcome to get to where you're at in your career today?
Well, from a career standpoint, what is really hard to do is get to the next step, whatever that might be. So if you're an individual contributor, you want to manage for the first time. I was thrown into management in my 20s. I was managing folks in their 40s, and believe me, that was intimidating. You had to learn trial by fire, which is, the work will teach you, is an adage one of my first mentors said. Don't worry about it. You will make mistakes, but as long as you don't repeat mistakes, you can build your competency and capabilities. And so the roadblocks were generally like the company was stuck, or, the incumbent was who had like the role that you wanted to get to. They were pretty comfortable. They weren't leaving. But I've often found opportunity is occurring when companies are going through dramatic changes. And so sometimes it's the company you're at and the opportunity presents itself. I'll give an example early in my career where the VP was considering me for, the senior manager role, the director role. And I said, I'm not sure if you're ready for the director. And I was saying to myself, look, I'm not sure. And I was talking to one of my mentors, to use one of your favorite words. And he said, Grant, you got to do it, because the worst thing happens is you fail, but you still learn something. And, the funny thing is, Connor, 2 months into it, and I don't want to sound overconfident, because this is like, well over a decade ago, a couple of decades ago, I said, yeah, this really wasn't as daunting as I thought it was, because you're in there, you're assumed to be the person who's going to succeed in that role. Otherwise, they wouldn't take that chance on you. So I guess that's the first lesson: risk, and feel free to, take some level of the risk that might have, you can't be overcome by fear of failure. You have to be more excited by the opportunity for success.
Or worried about shining and concerned about, hey, this senior guy who's 3 times my age is in the position I want, but I know I can do a better job here from experience and from what I'm seeing, and I can bring a lot of fresh ideas to the table. I had a similar experience to that when I was 22. I was managing a multi-million-dollar sales and marketing department. 90% of the people who I was managing, training, and coaching were 3 times my age. And so it is a very odd dynamic, and most people would have fear of being in that situation. But if you can overstep that fear, I think that can create great things in your life.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you stay humble and I love about life and about marketing, you learn something every day. It's very dynamic. And I remember early, I was in my 30s and I wanted to get to VP. It probably took to get to closer to 40 when I made that next hurdle. And the general manager, when the VP left above me, said, well, you don't have enough gray hair. I said, well, sorry about that. Let me see if I can age faster. Finally,
so you dyed your hair and you came back the next day.
I colored my hair the next day and put on a white shirt. No, I just like, I'll wait a few years. And eventually another company said, oh, you have enough gray hair, figuratively or literally. And, once you're in that seat, you prove yourself, and then, new opportunities. In my case, the next opportunity is often because I was acquired, and, there really wasn't a meaningful role at that company versus, leaving a current situation to, another situation. But it's all been a good journey.
What's been the main framework that you've identified to entering a company that you see potential in and repeatedly building them up to the point of a successful exit? I know it's kind of a broad question. I can break that down for you, but
actually, kind of that works. I think if you go back to Frontbridge, this is 2002. After the .com, some folks began their career, fortunately, after they didn't live through the highs and lows. They only know the highs. Believe me, there'll be lows. It's the life cycle of business and life. And so I said, before I go to the next company, I just want to make sure I pick the right one, because I was at a company like others were in 2000, 2001 that just didn't get the next round of funding. It was a .bomb. It started as a .com, right? And launched into the chasm, if you will. And so I came up with 7 criteria, almost like if you were a financial manager, you're trying to invest, you could be a VC or a private equity, venture capital, or PE backed. So I start with these criteria, and they're not necessarily in this order, just in the order that I think through them. And the first is culture. And I think culture is just so paramount in values. And Emburse, for example, one of the reasons we came to a meeting of minds I joined is we have the core values called See It. It's a nice little acronym. See It stands for sincerity, individuality, empathy, engagement, individuality, and teamwork. So See It, right? And so we live those values from the executive team to everybody who joins, to people who see us on Glassdoor. And that's made a difference in recruiting and retention and just the experience, right? So the second area is the people. That would make sense if you think about culture and values. And in my case, it's the management team. Do I like these folks? Would I go to battle with them? Do we have the right esprit de corps? Is there minimal politics? If anybody says there's no politics at my company, you have to question. There's always going to be some. But the minimal is the best way. Leave your egos at the door. The third thing is really the category. Like some people, they start a category and they pioneer and they get arrows in the back, or the rocks they push uphill roll right over them. But it's nice to have, like, I'm in multi-billion-dollar markets. And so as long as there's the market size and the category is growing, then that's going to help. And then the fourth area is the business model. And I learned that one through .coms. It used to be, hey, acquire company customers at any cost, and then eventually you monetize. But it doesn't work that way, right? You've got to find a path to profit to have a sustainable business. So having a cohesive, coherent, repeatable business model. Customers would be the fifth one. Like, if you ever read Crossing the Chasm or familiar with Jeffrey Moore's work, there's that early stage pioneers where, hey, you can get a few customers, maybe you give them so much value, they'll pay you enough money to make it worth your while. But if you don't get a critical mass and you don't have proof, customer proof and adoption, it's going to be hard to scale that company. And then, of course, certainly as a tech guy, the products, the offering, you've got to have good intellectual property, good development processes, be able to out-innovate your competitor. Otherwise, you get left behind. And then last but not least, and again, using the financial lens, financing. Do you have enough money? What's your burn rate? Do you have capital? Can you acquire folks? And so I've looked at those criteria. And quite frankly, I remember sitting down with the CEO of Frontbridge, Steve Gillings, and I said, this is 7 for 7. He said, I know. This is my 5th one. And that was another nice thing. Here was a CEO who'd done 4 successful exits. So he was ahead of me at that time. I may have caught up by now. But so those are the 7 criteria, Connor.
Do you get deep into this because you're looking at acquiring pieces of equity when you join on board as in a marketing leadership role?
Yeah, that's another reason, right? You sort of have to look at all these dimensions, Connor. It's like, do I want to work at this company? Can I get excited on Monday morning? Will I work late and not be frustrated? Will there be a return? So through the .com days, I had let's call it thousands and thousands of shares that helped start a fire. They weren't worth anything, but they could start a fire on a cold winter night. But you want to look at, can you create value? Can market? And the other thing is really important for, you get to VP or chief market officer. It's like, does marketing really have a seat at the table? Are you driving revenue? You partner with sales and products and other key finance drivers of the business, and your strategic value more than just executional excellence. And so if I look at all that, and that's part of the equation is, can I take the value of the company the day I joined, and can we increase that significantly? And then if you get to the point where you're acquired or you go public, and then of course your sweat equity, if you want to call it that, will have more value. And it doesn't always work out that way, but that's certainly a key element.
Right. Everyone listening right now and watching, I want to really highlight this key point, because what fascinated me about our conversation the other day is how you're positioning yourself in these companies as a marketing leadership role. Whereas most marketers, whether they're experienced CMO or director of marketing or anybody who's really on the job market right now, are looking for that comfy, cushy salary to take home a paycheck and just kind of live their life, versus deeply researching the companies, the industries that you're interested, what's actually the upside opportunity here of me putting my sweat equity in, and what potential is that for me for financial freedom down the road. And I think not enough, again, even if you're a starting employee and you're not in that same position, are you qualifying and doing this much due diligence on the organizations that are looking at hiring you, versus just going to get a job or just going to be, part of the marketing team in another company? So I just think that's really important. I wanted to highlight that for you.
Well, right, Connor, that's really good advice. I mean, look, if you're at a company, it's pretty hot market tech, and somebody's going to offer you a 20%, whatever, some significant increase, and it may make sense. There may be reasons why you want to go somewhere. It's always best to move towards something and away from something. That's number one. And number two is that you have to really feel like this is the company that you want to hang your hat on, that you think will be a nice marker along your marketing career journey. It's not just the salary, because if the grass is of course always greener, but if you find out they've got some legacy issues, reputational issues, they've churned management a lot, that it could be you could find yourself where you're making 20% more, but you're miserable, and what good does that do you, right? So just be really, I always call it being intentional about life and career, and make the decisions that feel right and that you can stick with, and you'll be happier in the long run.
How do you go through that process when you're looking at joining on board with a company like Emburse? Let's say I want to go find a CMO position in a $100 million company that I see $1 billion exit with. Most people through that process just kind of go through the traditional job application, interviews, talk to leadership. How do you thoughtfully go about getting information from leadership on stuff like finances and infrastructure, and the list of area, burn rate, how much cash flow are you guys doing? How do you thoughtfully go about and actually get insights to that information?
I think it's like this conversation, Connor, is organic. Each time you talk to somebody, I think typically for a head of marketing role, you're going to talk to about 10 people. Then you get some more information. You go back to that person. People always say, if you think of anything else, ask me. And most people don't. Well, you go back to that person. Hey, now that I talked to Mary or John, I really wanted to ask you another question. Can you tell me about this? Obviously you may have to sign a non-disclosure. Can you get a little more detail? You certainly want to talk to industry analysts. Maybe there's agency partners. I've hired and fired tons of agencies, advertising, PR, digital marketing. And so I'll go talk to their agency, because I could be the future person who decides whether to keep that agency. And I say, what do you think of this client? I mean, it's a simple thing to do, right?
Yeah.
You see a customer testimonial, say, hey, can I talk to that customer? Oh, that person's no longer here. We've decommissioned their software. I'm a SaaS software guy. So, you just have to you got to be a sleuth. You do some research, and you organically, it's called triangulation. You take data points, and do these add up, or is there like a red flag? I remember one company that I was looking, I think, and here's another great tip. Some of the best decisions you make in life are saying no.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of an opportunity. I've looked back at a lot of these, man, this thing crashed and burned. And there's this one company that just raised 50 million. And I can't mention the name of the company for obvious reasons. And people were so excited, man, you're the guy, we're going to have you, the CEO loves you. How soon can you start? And it's like, boy, there's something odd about, like, they're rushing through this process, right? I've got to make a decision, leave something to go to something. And they were raising this round. They were meeting the investors, and the peculiarities of the CEO were very evident in that meeting. There was very strong, language. I won't repeat those words. That I don't want to be around this person. And I had to say no to the recruiter. I'd give him a verbal yes. I hadn't joined. It wasn't day one, but it was like, hey, come in and meet with our VCs, and you get to meet with the CEO. And so those types of things, you've got to poke around and keep asking questions. The other thing that I think is really helpful, and I have to credit this is for CMOs in particular, an individual named John Ellett. He wrote a book called CMO Manifesto, and it's the 100-day game plan for marketing change agents. And he interviewed 70 CMOs. I was fortunate to be one of those. Like, what are the lessons learned? One of the best things we've come before a company to the leadership role is set your expectations, right? What are they asking you to do? Do you want to build brand, create demand, launch products, execute field marketing programs, and what resources do you have? Do they want you to totally clean house? I remember one opportunity I heard about, and they said, look, you're going to have to fire 90% of the marketing team. It's like, I didn't want to do that, right? I love building teams, but like somebody else can go in and clean house. That wasn't
right. Yeah, and things usually aren't going well when that's the case, when you have to do that.
That's another good flag. Yeah, there must be other departments that need some cleaning house too.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Follow your gut is kind of what I'm picking up with that too, is your gut is almost always right. If you smell something's off, even I've been in sales scenarios where it's like, okay, everything seems great. We're about to close this big deal. And it's like, something's off. And then you say, listen, guys, we're not going to do this. We're actually going to pull back from this. And come to find out, it was a great decision because they're going out of business anyways, or had some conspiracy in their business going on. So I think that's key. In the time remaining, I want to shift a little bit here towards more actionable strategies that marketers can look at implementing to get their company to the growth level. Maybe they see themselves in a business right now that 5, 10, 15 years down the road could have a great successful exit, acquisition, merger. What are the immediate, let's talk about channels first. What are some of the immediate channels that you look at marketing into once you're joining a new company?
Well, Carter, I take a little bit different perspective. Following along your question is I look at what I call the avenues for expansion, right? So, and then I'll talk about the marketing lever. So the avenues for expansion, your channels is one. You could OEM your product. You can have geographic expansion. You can have referral or resale expansion. So obviously, the geographies and channels are big levers, but, product line expansion, whether you acquire a company, you launch a new product, you partner, you take another company's product to market that's complementary, but increases your share of customer wallet that you can, compete for. Growing the brand is another area that you've got to put time into. And then once you have enough customers, you've certainly got to get that critical mass. And then it's about install base, cross-sell, customer marketing, it's often called. And so like those are the areas that, you make sure that the CEO, the management team, that they're sort of, where are they in all those areas? Or they can't put all your eggs in just product or all your eggs in just geo, right? So you've got those expansion. And then if you've got those expansion levers, the marketing levers, like to your quite more pointed to your question, like digital is so key. Even before, the pandemic, if I go back the last 10 years as a CMO, like everywhere I went, I said, like, how do we take $500,000 out of events and put it into digital? And people's like, why? What? And I said, wow. No, we're going to get the same return for events. Well, we're going to measure events with the same discipline that we measure digital. It either works or it doesn't. What's the ROI? What's the cost per lead? Can we close these? Or are they just people kicking the tires, grabbing, swagware, when they're at the event floor? And
when a lot of time, not to cut you off entirely, but I think a lot of the time I know customers who put millions of dollars a year into events, and their customers aren't even really the ones who are attending it. It's other representatives from their target organizations.
Right.
So it's like, at the end of the day, how are you actually reaching people? And you're going to spend tons of money to fly your salespeople out to get drunk for the weekend and hang out when you can reach 50, 100, thousands of more people digitally. And you've caught on to that earlier than most have, I think.
Yeah, I was fortunate back in like 2010. I had a peer group that included the CMO of Eloqua, CMO of Marketo. It's like,
oh, cool.
Yeah, and HubSpot. I just, folks that were on the cutting edge of, marketing automation. Therefore, I said, I got to get myself and my team up to that next step. And so, gosh, I look back, it's been a decade, but, a part of the values that I reward in marketing is digital savvy. And it's not just the digital marketing manager, but everybody should have digital savvy. And increase that, knowledge, because whether we engage on a website or through a webinar, online community or something, you want to find ways to connect. And so that's a big area. But, in addition to digital channels, you've got to have good demand generation capability overall. You've got to have good product to market methodology, how you launch and get products adopted. You need to have strong communications, whether it's analyst relations or PR. And when I go to a company, I'll also assess, like, how good is that company in these areas? And do I have the right leader? I will tell you at Emburse, I brought in a leader for strategic communications and a leader for demand gen, and also a leader for web. We had people doing the website, but not somebody with a vision that could understand that, the web visit is more than just the visit. It's a customer kind of trying you out, and, they can kick the tires and abandon. So it's not just, your time on the site, but where do they exit? Where do they enter? When do they, register? When do they ask for a demo, and how? And, really thinking that through in a strategic fashion. It's more than just your organic traffic that's going to matter. So those are sort of the criteria that I look at and how to grow the marketing contribution and capability.
And then in terms of application, do you prefer digital over in person? Like, if you had to pick one or the other, you only had budget for one, do you typically always jump into digital first?
Well, I would say it depends, Connor, because like recently, myself and some other peers, we've been doing some smaller now they're virtual, but they will be in person. We've done in past in person. If you're trying to get to a C-suite, you're probably not going to get them on, some AdWords campaign.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can bring peers together, it could be through a webinar, but, in person's better. Those are more intimate. Just a massive trade show that has, tens of thousands or even thousands of folks, you might get sheer numbers, but you may not get the quality of interaction. That's really key, is you have meaningful conversations, and you can uncover through, good sales methodology of discovery process. Like, are you going to be addressing a critically unmet business need? That's a gap in the executional excellence of that company. And if so, they're probably willing to pay for it, your solution, if you're, competitively positioned and have a good offering. And so those, I like the more smaller events, but broadly speaking, I prefer digital. There's some print fits in, but in the marketing mix, you can't just, be one dimensional. But certainly I do have a preference for digital, because you can turn it off and on the spigot really fast. If it works, do more of it. It doesn't work, stop it real fast.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise, like, you commit to a show, you commit a year in advance, you put it on the books, and the show turns out to be a dud. You spent your 10, 20, 50 or 100,000, and, the ROI is not there.
Can't cut it off halfway through.
No, yeah, you could cut your losses and just give 50,000 on a 100K commitment if you don't go, and you're 3 months before. But what good does that do, right?
What's working absolute best for you from the demand? Because we've talked about ABM a bit over the podcast, and customer marketing. I think that's one of the ones who really won through last year, got deep with their customers and did some very, very strong existing customer marketing. But now, as things are opening back up, we're looking at the horizons of aggressive expansion again. What's really working for you on the demand gen side?
Well, we have a number of things working. Fortunately, we do have offerings that for small, medium, and large businesses, we call it tailored solutions. We don't have a one-size-fits-all philosophy. And so we do use different tactics, digital or otherwise, for different customers, segments and personas, so we resonate. But I think one of the things we've found that's working quite well, because it really brings together our BDR business development reps, sales, and marketing are the intent based. So if we offer spend management solutions, so it could be expense management. You can all do it all on your smart device, and just snap a receipt, and then it goes into the expense system and gets reconciled. You get reimbursed. It's all faster, easier, better. Or we do invoice automation, and we do also we work on payments. Just make electronic payments. And why cut a check? It doesn't make any sense. It takes time. It's fraught with error. And so across that equation, we find that if somebody's searching on these terms, we know there's some intent. So, you might get that email answered. Somebody might pick up the phone. You might have a conversation. So that's paid off really well. There's a number of platforms, these crowds.
Just to pause you on that real quick. When you see someone taking action digitally, you're marrying in your BDR team to do direct outreach through cold calling.
Well, through cold calling, or through, some technology like a drift. Chat bots, right?
Are they using LinkedIn to retarget their personal profiles to retarget and connect?
We use that's one of the sources. We use LinkedIn, but we also have within our infrastructure, which is a key aspect of your arsenal, is having a good integrated. We have Marketo and Salesforce, and so with some other tools we have in there, we can see what is this person active. They went to the web page, they went to a webinar, they went to an event. They responded to an email, and so they're not only in the market, they're engaged, or did they just click on one thing and that's it, right? And so then you can differentiate. Each of our sellers has a target account, right? So they may not all be doing ABM, but they try to go after certain customers, certain segments, geographies, verticals, company sizes, and try to connect with the prospect. Once they become a marketing qualified account. And we actually use the MQA term. Some of you still use MQL, but we want to get people in an account so that if you have 2 or 3, 4 people that you have a relationship or you're engaged with, you increase the likelihood that you can accelerate, create an accelerated deal.
I ask my team, is it just a fart or is it the real shit that we got right there?
Yeah, no, we definitely, you want to know if somebody is in a market, and if not, you just put them in a nurture stream, right?
Yep. Are they just passing gas on us, going through, or
full of hot air? We got a few of those.
Right. Well, Grant, this has been phenomenal, brother. I can't thank you enough. And I know you just have, there's a lot more we can dive into, which is exactly why people need to follow you, check out other podcasts you've done, check out some of the content and what you're doing at Emburse. Before we wrap up as well, is there anything actionable, recommended that you'd like to share? Imagine you got a room full of, every top CMO and B2B marketer in the world right in front of you, and you have a quick minute to share a piece of advice. What would you like to say?
Well, fail fast for sure. I mean, you've got to have this attitude that you want to experiment, you want to try different things. You want to make a lot of little small bets. I wouldn't say make $100,000 million bets and fall on those swords if they don't work. But that's the thing I've learned in my team. I think they really embrace that as well. Hey, Grant, we found a better tool for this, or we found a better tactic for that. And I think if you have that mentality and you measure everything and you have clarity and insight into what's working and why and what's not and why, it'll help you be a more agile marketer and a more agile marketing team, and you probably can increase your contribution to company success.
Golden nuggets, lots of golden nuggets here, guys. Again, make sure you share this out so that Grant gets the exposure he deserves. What's the best way for people to find you, follow you, get into contact with you?
Yeah, it's probably the Granny Johnson one at Gmail. That's the easiest way to do it. They're LinkedIn. Find me, Grant Johnson Emburse. Pretty easy to do that. And I'm not that active as I probably could be on Twitter. Busy building the company, doing some subtweeting. But LinkedIn is probably a better platform for me.
Rock and roll. Go connect with the man on LinkedIn. Grant, thank you so much. Stick around for just one quick second here while we wrap up. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you share this out. Very much appreciated. Go to all your favorite podcast apps, wherever you like to listen to the show. You can check out past episodes. And when we publish Grant's episode on audio, please go to iTunes, leave a 5-star review so others can find the show too. with that, my friends, we will see you over on the next one.
Yeah.